And I am a co-director along with Dan Vimont at the Center for Climatic Research on UW-Madison of the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts. And our organization has been working since about 2007 to try and identify how climate change will have an effect on our society, on our economy, on our natural resources, and how we might be able to adapt our way of doing business, our way of life, our way of managing natural resources in a way that will benefit us rather than have a negative impact as we move forward. So what I'd like to do tonight is talk a little bit about what we understand about climate, what we expect about climate, and what a community can do to try and adapt for climate change in the future. Let's talk about historic climate. We always need to look backwards historically to understand where we're going forward when we talk about climate. And in Wisconsin, Chris Kucharek from the Department of Agronomy has done a very extensive analysis of the weather data that's available from the 172 weather co-op stations around the state. And he's looked at what's been going on over the past 35 years or so with temperature and precipitation to see if he could find any trends. And what he found was that overall, Wisconsin has warmed, but not uniformly. And what this plot shows here of the state is the difference between some place like Florence County, which actually got a little colder over that period on average, as opposed to the northwest part of the state, which tended to be a little bit warmer. One of the things that we see as these temperatures are changing are the effects on our natural ecosystems and our environment. And this is just a graph showing what happened in Lake Mendota in terms of the first freeze or the latest freeze date over the time period from 1850 to 2000. And what we're seeing is that Lake Mendota is frozen over for shorter and shorter periods as we move forward in time. As well, the first freeze in the fall is coming later and later over this time period. This extends the growing season, obviously, and so there's some benefit for that for the farming community, but it's a very clear signal that warming has been taking place over this time period based on the data that we've actually measured from these weather stations across the state. If this was easy, I wouldn't be up here talking to you about it. You'd all be doing it already. I mean, once you understand that the climate is not a stationary or a stable effect, that it changes, you should be able to think about what we can do to be prepared for it. And then there's always the challenge of trying to find ways to be adaptive and prepared and at the same time be sustainable and try and reduce our use of electricity and energy and our greenhouse gas emissions so that we're not continuing to contribute to the underlying causes of climate change.
So, when we think of climate change, a lot of times it's easy to picture some of the photos of the polar ice caps and what's happening in different parts of the world. But we don't have to do that. And as Dave's slides show, all we have to do is look in our own backyard to see the impacts of it. Lake Mendota this year, I think it was frozen 65 days. Last year, 62 days. The change is here and it's real. So working with Dave and his folks, we came up with the scenario, the warmer, wetter winters, worked with all of our department heads, and we asked for community input from people to bring to us challenges that they could see coming from climate change. And some of those are as simple and as obvious as we have county highways that are washing out more, that are getting flooded over more because of these increased rain events. So we have to look in our plans of doing things like replacing culverts with bigger culverts to handle more of the runoff that occurs. Our goal is to be prepared on one hand to deal with the consequences, but also to do our part in preventing further degradation of the atmosphere through greenhouse gas emissions. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the county, and the reason I want to do so is not only to inform people about what's going on, but for those of us who are concerned about climate change, many of us are also concerned about the fact that the state and federal government have pretty much put their head in the sand when it comes to climate change. Not only are they not doing anything, they are working to prevent anything from happening and literally making the situation much worse. It's a pretty hostile attitude toward the rock-solid science of climate change. And there's no reason this should be a partisan issue. If we all can't agree on science, which is observation and measurement and observing again and reporting objectively what's happening, then we're in trouble. So I think it's important that while we realize the challenges we face on the state and the federal level, that we also do what we can on the local level. And I, for one, don't like to complain about something someone else is not doing unless I'm doing something myself to keep my own house in order. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Dane County, because I think not only is it helpful for what we're doing here, but I think it's a model that can be replicated in community after community across the state and across the nation. Because when you think about it, when we think about, oh my gosh, the state's not doing anything, the federal government's not doing anything, usually what they do policy-wise is geared toward making things happen on the ground level. So my strategy, our strategy, we're just going to bypass that and we're just going to make it happen on the ground level. A lot of folks who are concerned about this issue are feeling pretty depressed right now because there's plenty of bad news. But I want to let you know there's also a lot of good news, and there is also a path. If it's not going to happen over there, we can do it locally and we can really make a difference, because we're making a difference here in Dane County. And this gets the attention of people. We give tours all the time at our landfill. So there's a lot of work we can do moving forward on this.